Awesome. Looks like we got a full room, Dave.
Fantastic.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of AHA with Amplify. I'm very pleased to have you here today where the sun's shining a little brighter as the Jays are on their way to the World Series after last night's reasonably exciting game. My name's Dave Scabar. I'm the Chief Growth Officer at Amplify, and I've got the pleasure of leading the sales and marketing efforts for our organization. So today's topic resonates with me on multiple levels. I not only hear questions from our clients in the greater business community, but also internally with our own Amplify people. Today, we're going to dig into advertising and marketing. And we're similar to how Amplify brings the best of Big Four to small and medium business. Dave Rossborough is on a mission to help SME owners deploy enterprise level digital strategies, assets, and software on a budget. Dave says that finding new ways to fuse technology and human behavior to reach business and marketing goals is what gets him out of bed in the morning. And my guess is that in 25 years applying his trade in digital marketing, there's been no shortage of ways or new ways to leverage that technology. Enter Lightbody Marketing. Dave and his team at Lightbody Marketing help small and mid-sized businesses cut through the noise and achieve measurable growth. Their approach focuses on aligning strategy with outcomes, using data-led systems and tools to train machine learning algorithms, meet customers where they are in their dynamic influence loop, optimize campaigns to move prospects along the customer journey, identify underperforming areas of the customer acquisition process, and ensure every marketing dollar works harder. With a focus on clarity, predictability, and results, Lightbody Marketing partners with business leaders to transform marketing from a cost center into a predictable growth engine. At Amplify, our network is made up of CPAs, business affiliates of varying professional services, and of course, small to medium business owners. We've brought Dave in to chat through the narrative around marketing and advertising being just an expense that I'm sure we've all heard or said before. I'm hoping to hear Dave's perspective and unpack how businesses can build systems, track outcomes, connect marketing activity to growth, and shift the mindset from cost in center to investment. Dave, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Dave. I'm looking forward to nerding out on this topic with this big room. And you reminded me I have to go update my LinkedIn profile because it's been 27 years of hard slog now, not 25.
You turned your back for 2 years, eh? So perhaps it's worth setting the stage a bit here. I've suggested here that there's a general assumption or misconception that SMBs view marketing as a black hole for their money. In your experience with clients and industry partners, what do you feel are the most common misconceptions SMBs have about marketing?
Yeah, so it's difficult, right? Because most business owners don't go through any kind of marketing education. They go through the school of hard knocks. They know how to develop the product that they're selling, the service that they're selling, how to develop their own expertise, and how to create something that people want to buy. But they haven't been through any kind of formalized marketing training. Any marketing that they do is born out of experience, just getting out there and trying things. And there's so many different things you could try that a lot of businesses end up going a little bit into one thing, a little bit into another, and not getting any success. And in coming out of it, battle hardened, but with some misconceptions. There are four main ones that I hear all the time. The first one is that the goal should be leads. You need to be profitable on that first ad dollar that's spent, and there's a focus on metrics around that. And when you spend any advertising dollars and you don't get profitability on that in your first 7 days, 14 days, 30 days, there's a tendency to turn it off and say, my advertising is supposed to get me a profitable customer, and they have to be profitable in those first 30 days. And that's a viewpoint that is more focused on quantity over quality, which is an issue, right? Because if you're not focusing on a customer that's going to be providing you a long-term profitable return on your investment as an advertiser, then you're focusing on short-term leads, a customer that's not the ideal customer for you, one that's probably going to cause you a lot of heartache, the lowest paying customer that has more demands on your team and on yourself. So trying to get leads as the core thing ignores what the business needs to be focused on, which is profitable customers over a long term. The second is that advertising has to be a gamble. That if you're putting dollars into it, you don't know what's going to come out the other end. And that comes from that start-stop mentality of putting a little bit out over here, a little bit out over there, trying it for a short period of time, and then pulling out again, trying something that's not advertising for a while. You're never able to actually build up any momentum. You're never able to learn what works and what doesn't work with which ideal client profile along which stage of their customer journey. And so it can be a gamble. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword there. It's not quite a misconception because it actually is a gamble for a lot of small business owners if they're not implementing frameworks or not utilizing education or outsourced people or internal hires that know how to do it predictably for their business, right? Not every business is the same. But if you do have a framework and a knowledge set and the ability to white knuckle through the early days of learning to get out the other side, to have a predictable flow of profitable customers, then it's no longer a gamble. You know, if I put in $1, I get 4 out. And then you can scale according to how much service you can actually handle in your business.
I feel like
The third,
I feel like on that you're speaking right to our roster of CPAs for sure. I mean, CPAs are, as you know, are hardwired not to gamble and to look at that ROI. So I think you're already resonating with our crowd.
right? It's because it ends up being like you're thinking more about the long-term investment and the compounding of the money and the intellect and the learning that you put into the system. Right. So like if we relate that to what compounding interest looks like over the long term, the analogy works really well there with CPAs. If you put, I've learned this the hard way. You put some money in early on in your investment journey and then leave it alone for a long time and never top it up. You're not taking advantage of dollar cost averaging or anything like that. And it doesn't perform the way you want it to perform, right? And you're not diversifying, and diversification is a massive part of advertising as well. And if you don't diversify, the problem you have with not diversifying is that it leads me to the third misconception, which is the customer journey is what we used to call a funnel. A lot of people still call it a funnel. It's still a funnel, but to us, the funnel is dead. It doesn't work anymore. It's a linear journey that doesn't get into the reality of how a customer actually shops. Google did a report in 2020, and they came out with a concept called the messy middle. And the messy middle is basically that people are triggered into thinking about a product or service that they want, to scratch an itch, to solve a problem because someone told them about it. There are all sorts of different triggers, and we'll get into that later. But once they get in there, they're not just, what's the problem? What's the solution? Who's got the solution? I'm going to buy it right now. And you think about it from your own buyer's journey. The last time you bought something, you generally did a bit of research first, asked some people, visited some websites, watched some YouTube videos, and you go in this infinite loop that we call the dynamic influence loop until somebody gives you the solution that you want at a price you're willing to pay at a time when you're willing to pay it. And then you pop out of that loop and you make the purchase and you become a customer. So you can tell right away that that's not a linear funnel. It's not, you put somebody in at the top, you nurture them down with a few ads and they come out the other end. They're jumping out of that funnel, jumping into someone else's funnel, coming back around, jumping in again at a different spot in the funnel. So the analogy falls apart right away. So that linear journey is more about being in front of people more often at the right time in their journey to help them understand what you offer, why you offer it, and why you're the best solution for them.
I'm sure there's a lot of vendors out there that have thought they had me right on the precipice of purchase, only for that loop to go back around, ask my wife for budgetary approval, get denied, and then toil all the way over here again on the discovery or research phase. So that
Yeah.
I could definitely see how that resonates for sure.
But just think about retail shopping. How often do you put something in your e-commerce cart and then never come back to it? Right? What percentage of things that you put in your cart do you actually buy? Right, and that is in the e-commerce world, that is the strongest signal of buyer intent that you can have. Add something to your cart, start your checkout, and then abandon it. Well, you're right there, but most like the conversion rate on these sites is generally 3-4% on a good e-commerce site. So that people get all the way down that journey, and then something happens. It can just be like the phone rings and you forget that you ever put it in your cart, right? So that journey can go on for days, weeks, years in some cases. And a lot of your marketing is to do with nurturing people long before they're actually ready to make that decision. And that's something you should be consciously thinking about in terms of, well, if somebody can't afford you right now, but they're going to age into a time of life when they can afford you and they are more interested in that service, maybe they work for someone and they're an employee, and then at a certain age they become an entrepreneur, and then they need an accountant at that stage because their finances just became a lot more complicated. You want to be nurturing that person from long before they decided to actually need you, right? Like, so that journey becomes even longer if you think about it pre-trigger, right? Before they're even thinking about what it is that they need you for, where instead you're giving them advice and education and helping them understand when they need your service, even if that service is years down the road. And if you extrapolate that out a little bit further, the fourth misconception is that you just need one ad. And that magic ad is the thing that's going to do it for you, right? This is where every time we talk about advertising, it comes up. How do I make a viral video? How do I make a viral ad that goes out to everybody? And I can retire next week. And, virality is, it can't, there's a formula to it, but that formula is only really good if you're, making money off of an entertainment YouTube channel, because you're not getting your ideal customer. You're just putting it out to millions of people who are never going to buy from you. So it becomes a vanity metric. And if you think about that messy middle that I talked about, and people are going around and around and around in this infinite loop trying to figure out what they want to buy, it's impossible to have one magic ad. It can't do everything. It can't introduce the problem, introduce you, introduce your expertise, talk about your solution, make them convinced that your solution is the right solution for them, introduce your customers that have worked with you for years and want to give you a testimonial, tell them what the price is, tell them all the different packages you have, tell them how to book like in one ad. You can do it, but it's not going to work, right? If that one ad is going out there on an ad budget and you're just repeating the same ad to the same people over and over and over again, then you're just going to annoy them and they're going to ignore your ad from then on in. All of these things are important, but putting them all in one magic ad is a recipe for disaster when you're advertising. The systems that exist now, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later too, they want hundreds of ads and they can handle them now. The hardware and the machine learning is such that having this big portfolio of ads and creative and copy allows you to win if your competitors are not doing the same thing, especially, and most aren't.
Right. And that's interesting, even going back to what you're saying earlier, like the kind of analogy of being a mile wide and an inch deep, yet still needing, hundreds of different formats of that content, and the vanity metrics, clicks don't pay the bills. So now maybe I've got the purse strings and I'm looking at how to execute on a marketing strategy. And obviously one metric that wouldn't be a vanity metric would be that return on investment, right? So how could a business leader kind of shift their mindset from, looking at marketing as, we could cut this whole webinar short by just getting right to it. Like, how can we get business leaders to shift that mindset to seeing marketing and advertising as an investment rather than, that black hole?
Yeah, it's a process. There's no magic bullet to say, just shift your mindset. Hey, it's being able to actually put a framework and system that you can trust in place and follow through the steps of implementing that framework until you find the data points that make sense for you. So it's this predictable system, right? The goal needs to be about what are you putting around your growth engine that allows you to be profitable in the long term and allows you to understand what a dollar in means to your business over the long term, right? So instead of thinking about it as, I've got a $100 budget for this year, I'm going to put $100 in January and then we'll see what happens. It should be, what are the things that I'm putting together in an advertising strategy based on a framework and a system to take my customer all the way from first hearing about me to purchasing a second, third, fourth time in your industry, to become a retainer client, right? So the first month, they may not be profitable for you, But if they're coming back and paying you every single month, it doesn't take long for that cost per acquisition to become a profit center rather than a cost center. If you're just looking at, okay, I paid $100 for this person and they paid me $100 in fees in the first month, that's not profitable. I'm going to shut my advertising off. Then you'll never grow through advertising because you're not thinking about the second, third, fourth, fifth. Like if that person stays with you on average 5 years, that means you can spend an awful lot more to acquire that customer than you think if you're basing it on, first month profitability. And when so many of your competitors might be basing it on first month profitability and getting out of the race right away, then having that staying power is really helpful in the long term, right? It's reframing it into thinking about how you're going to scale your business using dollars and systems. It's not about that first sale. If you think about it, there's some data from Harvard Business Review for service-based businesses, which CPAs fall into, that acquiring a new B2B client is anywhere from 5 to 25 times more expensive than retaining one. So if you're thinking about the acquisition of this customer, then you better be getting it right to get you the customer that's going to stay for 3, 4, 5 years. If you're attracting with your advertising people that will pay you $300 in the first month and then leave in the second month, then your advertising looks great, but your system for profitability does not look great. They're gone, and you're spending money on customers that don't stick around, and you're spending time getting new customers every single month that leave the next month.
It sounds to me a little bit like inviting the wrong people to the party. Really understanding your customers probably got to have a big part of that.
Right. Yeah. Understanding your customer yourself, and then training the advertising systems to know who the right customers are, not just the customer, right? Oh yeah, the advertising system can get you a lead, but if that lead converts as a free customer, like taking advantage of some free offer, and never converts into a paid customer, we don't want to encourage the machine to go get us more of those customers. We want to encourage the machine to get us the customer that stays around for years for that long-term value. So thinking about advertising, not just about the acquisition of the customer, but the acquisition of the correct customer, and what your advertising is doing post-purchase as well, and what your marketing system is doing post-purchase, your automation, your business ops. What is your system and framework doing to make sure that that customer does stay? Because it is cheaper to do that than to acquire another new customer every month, especially if it's the wrong type.
Right. So then in terms of that process that, it sounds like you've got so many levers that you can deal with, and inputting that kind of customer data. I assume then you're talking about kind of a loop that goes back to saying, yes, thanks for getting this person in the door, pardon me, but this one simply doesn't fit this mold. How does somebody initiate that process? Because that seems obviously pretty comprehensive.
Yeah, and it is a framework. There are specific steps to take. We have them all outlined in a toolkit and a framework that your audience can access for free. We can give the link to that at the end. But you have to think through who your customer is. And there are some exercises to go through. This is the ideal customer for me. This is going beyond demographics. It's thinking about the triggers that cause them to come into the market. What's the thing that a colleague, a friend, a family member is saying to them to make them think about the service that you're offering? What is the life change that has happened? Where are they at in their education? Where are they at in their journey in parenthood, in their job role that is causing them to look for your solution? What's the pain point that is happening in their life? And you'll have various ideal client profiles, and each one's going to have a different pain point. What are those pain points? And what do you need to be telling someone when they have that pain point? And then once you've identified yourself to them as someone who identifies with their pain point and has a solution for that, what are the things that you need to tell them slowly as they learn more about what you do and how you can solve their problem over time? And what pieces help them move to the next stage of the loop, so that when they're exploring, you're giving them these little signposts along the way to say, keep your exploration with me. I'm here for you to answer your questions, to show you what other people think about me, to show you what solutions we have, to give you a lot of value before you become a customer so that you trust that I have your best interests at heart and I can service the need that you have and solve the problem that you have. And then systematically going through and removing friction all along the whole customer journey, right? So there's obvious friction and then there's hidden friction. The obvious friction could be something like a slow website. So if you're spending money on advertising or even going out and doing meet and greets with people or attending networking events, and then you send them to your website and it doesn't load fast enough on their mobile device and they click back, well, all that hard work is for nothing, or any dollars you spent is for nothing. Deloitte did some research that said, this is ridiculous, it can be this effective. A 0.1 second faster site speed on your homepage can boost the conversion of your website by 8%. It's bananas because a lot of businesses, their conversion rate is below 8% already. So they could be doubling.
Or if you have
conversion rate.
8% growth plans,
right? Any growth is good growth, right?
My goodness.
That's sort of like the obvious. I say obvious, but maybe it's hidden to some, that like these tiny little pieces of data can make such a big difference to your marketing and how well you convert people. But then there's hidden things like, what are you not saying to them in your advertising, right? So if you're trying to do the one magic ad that helps them to go all the way from first hearing about you to buying from you in one fell swoop, and they don't watch the whole ad, then you're missing out on telling them all the different things that you do differently to your competitors, all the things that you help them with that maybe somebody else doesn't, the experience that you've had with people who have similar problems, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These are the friction points that if you're putting things like that in front of them, to answer the questions before they even ask them themselves, or to help them think more about those questions, then you're going to have a better chance of moving them down to become an educated customer when they first come to you. We have a lot of clients who start with a consultation. The client comes into the office, sits down across the desk from you. You have a conversation for about an hour. You answer all the questions they have. And then most of the time when you've got them in front of you, you can close them at a much higher rate than if they didn't come into the office. So it's a pretty good KPI to get somebody coming into your office to sit there. You're the expert. You use that hour to develop that relationship. But what if you'd already used your time beforehand to develop that relationship so that they only needed 15 minutes, or they even come up to the receptionist and say, no, I don't need to meet. I already know what I need to know. Where's the form? How do I sign it up? And this is part of that Google report as well. They've got their rule, 7-11-4. A client, before they buy from you, on average, needs to interact with you or your content for 7 hours, 11 different times in 4 different places. So that can be as simple. You can accomplish that in advertising using video ads across Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and TikTok or YouTube. Right? Those are 4 different locations, but you can equally just do YouTube, do LinkedIn, go to meet and greets, and your website can count as a location as well. As long as they've interacted with you on average 11 times and interacted with you and your brand, your content for 7 hours. So you think about that from a friction perspective, the amount of opportunity you have in all of that time and all of those interactions to reduce friction when those you're competing against are not doing that. They're just putting one ad out there, or they're doing one offline thing once a quarter. So this allows the algorithms to learn, right? You're think about all that data that's coming back in from all of those touch points that these AI machines can learn from.
Well, it's interesting, we keep going back to this, talking about vanity metrics, and, people probably familiar with return on ad spend or cost per clicks or views, things like that. But, it wouldn't have even crossed my mind the speed at which a homepage lands. Like that to me would say that would be a vanity metric. What metrics should small to medium business owners be tracking? Like it opening that horizon is, it seems like if we're going all the way from one side of the spectrum of how fast does my website load to, how many hours of content I have in the ether, what should we be tracking?
Yeah, there's kind of a checklist for it, because some of
Okay,
them are actually metrics, and some of them are more sort of yes no binary answers. So if someone comes to your
got
website
it.
and it's not properly mobile optimized, and they can't find the thing they're looking for on the mobile version of your website because it was built for a desktop,
Sure.
that's going to cause friction, right?
So it's more of a
Um,
yes, no. Is your website optimized? Yes, no. It's not how optimized is it, or how quick. It's a binary. If you want to play in that space, you have to have an optimized setup.
a lot of it, yeah, right. So the site speed, it's not, it is more of a sliding scale. Like improving your site speed is going to improve your conversion rate. Being clearer on your website about what you do, showing your photo on your website so people can interact with you and feel like they know who you are. Having a bio on there, like all these things. Think about if you were in person, what would that potential client want to know about you, and get it all on that website, right? So then that's part of the journey is the website. Give them ways to move along the journey there. But then it's also in your advertising as well. What are the things that they need to know along their journey, that if they haven't seen a single review for you, and it's all you talking in your advertising saying, I'm great, come work for me. I've given you all this free stuff. Why don't you come work with me? But nobody else has said, actually, yeah, Dave is great. You should go work with Dave. That's a friction killer, right? Who have you worked with before, right? What case studies do you have? What results have you had? What things have you developed that make you different to somebody else? So they always say the experts are the people that put systems in place rather than people that just talk about how good they are, right? So being able to reflect all this stuff out there to kill friction is a huge part of it, right? And we've got a long list of that the audience can have for free as well, to check their own systems and make sure that they're killing all that friction. But in terms of the top level things that they need to be tracking, is like most people track that ROI, return on ad spend metric, when they're doing digital advertising. That ROAS number, how many dollars did I put in? How many dollars did I get out? And that's the holy grail. And that is a ceiling for how far you can grow, because the ad platforms count return on ad spend over a short window. So between 7 and 30 days. So if you spend your dollar today and the customer signs up 6 days from now and makes a $50 purchase, maybe it's your lowest end offer, and you spent $50 to get that customer, then your return on ad spend is, you're just breaking even, right? But if that person came back 35 days down the line and purchased a $150 package for you, a $500 package, a $3,000 retainer, then your return on ad spend is astronomical, right? So that's where ROAS breaks down in getting profit, like allowing you to track how profitable you are. So that the things that are the most important are not your cost per click, not your CPM. These are all kind of important things when you're figuring out what your next ad should be. But it's not your overall campaign health that these metrics look at. Instead, we have a thing called the acquisition profitability score, which is basically just how much can I spend to get a new customer profitably. And so you take your lifetime gross profit, you divide it by your cost per acquisition, that gives you a score, and that score is basically your license to print money. The higher you get that score, the more you're going to make on every new person that comes in, right? And it's based on your lifetime value of a client, right? So if you know that a client's going to stay with you for 4 years and they're going to spend on average $5,000 with you, right? You can afford to spend a lot more than $10 to get them in the door the first time if they're going to be one of those clients, right? So how do you attract those ideal clients? By getting a low cost per acquisition, which is going to bring your score up, and a high long-term profitability, which is going to bring it up even further, right? Those are your big movers, your big like, overall campaign metrics that you want to really understand for long-term profitability. And then as you get into the data itself, you're looking at really actionable data, like ignoring all the noise and looking at how these machines that Meta and Google have built specifically, the advertising machines are now completely built on machine learning. It's all to do with data that's flowing in there. Zuckerberg came out and said something not too long ago that was basically within, I think he said 5 to 10 years, advertising on Facebook's going to look like you go in there and you tell them what your product is and how much you want to pay for a new customer. That's it. That it will go figure out all the advertising assets, who to target, how to target them, how often, what the frequency should be, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the way these systems are going. And then you can think about what job in that customer journey is each one of my ads fulfilling on, right? Is it greeting someone at the start of the journey with us, or is it closing them at the end of the journey, and all the little data points in between?
So with all those data points, I mean, surely you've got to have a lot of data integrity built into your own systems and processes to be able to track that. Again, if we look at Amplify's people, oftentimes we'll land with small to medium business owners as the kind of the head of data, and usually that data comes with dollar signs. Having that level of data integrity has got to be pretty critical.
It is, yeah. Making sure that all your technology is connected and your customer data is flowing all the way back into the algorithms. And this is one of the most difficult hurdles to get over, right? And having that audited and working properly. Now, the ad systems are getting better. Meta and Google are both getting better at providing these tracking mechanisms that allow people to more easily set it up. But since Apple went on their privacy crusade a few years back with their iOS update that had users block cookies, it's a lot more complicated than it used to be to get this data flowing, but it is absolutely integral. And it's one of the biggest challenges we have with new clients when we're helping them through this, is being able to reverse engineer the systems and software that they have in place to feed the data back into the algorithms, because they need to know, when did a customer visit a web page? When did they fill out a form? When did they come back to the website after that? When did they make their first purchase, second purchase, third purchase? What are the dollars of those purchases? Which platform did they buy it on? Are they opening emails? All, like, as much of that rich data as that can go back as possible will help the whole thing learn. And those that send really good data are the ones that win in the long term.
Right. So there's a system in place. And again, it's not that funnel, it's that kind of customer journey. Sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, and just kind of measuring the cookie crumbs that they leave around and following that to ultimately see if they do become a paying customer. Is that the idea?
That's right. Yeah. And which ads it's showing at which point, because it's going to experiment. If you give it enough creative and enough copy and you give it a reasonable budget and you give it really good data coming back, it's going to experiment. So whenever you launch a new campaign or you make a major change to a campaign in these new systems, you end up having a week or two of flux in your results. And that is completely normal. We tell all our clients, just be ready. And if you can, just don't look at your numbers for a couple of weeks, because it's going to be like this. It's the system trying to figure out, how do I show the right assets in the right order to the right people to get them to do the things that move them along the journey, right? So instead of it's just like, oh, I'm going to try showing this ad to everyone and see if they convert. I'm going to show this ad to these people to see if I can get a low CPM, cost per 1,000 impressions, that's then going to fill up my bucket with lots of new people who are now aware of me. And I'm going to use this ad to give them more benefit content so they understand more about what I do for them. And that will hopefully lead to them clicking. So I'll pay a higher CPM for that because it's a more targeted group, but I want a higher click-through rate than I wanted on the one before because I want to get them to my website. And then the next one may be, I want to show them some social proof. I want to show them customer testimonials, so that now that question that they had in their head, like, is this person for real? Are they trustworthy? Like, what are other people saying about them? And those I want a very high click-through rate on because I'm now getting closer to that buying journey. I want to see them come back to the website there. So each of these key pieces of the journey are mapped, and the systems are now learning from your specific business and then pulling in all these millions of data points from all the other similar businesses out there that they're tracking. Google Analytics is on every website. Google knows exactly who's doing what on what website and which people did which things before, what they searched for, what other websites they looked at before they made that purchase. So instead of it pushing and pushing and pushing someone who's not ready to purchase to do it, it's instead saying, all right, this person sits in the journey over here. They're still exploring. So we're going to give them all this exploration content that's meant for that. And when we feel, based on their data points and all the knowledge that we've learned about them, when we feel like they're ready to come and purchase, we're going to put the closer offer in front of them. That piece of creative that has a really high click-through rate, a really low cost customer acquisition cost on that one ad, but it has a really high CPM because that's your really targeted group of people. It costs you more to reach them because they're the money people, right? So the whole set of ads then work as a team, and you leave them on unless there's something in an ad that is out of date or incorrect or features, a partner that's not at the business anymore. You leave them on because they're all doing a job. So you're always adding ads to your system now instead of putting them up against each other to see which one does best at low CAC, right? You want to be saying, okay, which is the one that can do better at low CPM to get my ideal customer interested in the first place? What's a new one I can test for that and put it into the mix and keep growing?
So it sounds a little bit like A/B testing on steroids.
Yes. Yeah, I have a friend who says it's AB squared or to the power of 100. I don't have the same math skills as your audience does, obviously.
But it is fundamentally that it's presenting different material, different of that 7 hours of content and 11 different touch points, I believe. Was that the metric?
Yeah.
7 hours of content, materially more than
7 hours of content, 11 touch points, 4 platforms.
Okay. And so those materials that you're presenting it might not even be in the same format that they're engaging with. It could be on an entirely different platform.
Exactly. And we no longer, I don't recommend that anybody in the long term just focuses on one platform, right? There's a tendency in the B2B services industry to just focus on LinkedIn and say that people on Facebook and people on Instagram are not my customers. And it's just like we've proven it over and over again, it's not true, right? So LinkedIn has its place in the mix, but when someone is at the cottage just scrolling and catching up with the scores and your ad pops up, if it's relevant to them, if your content is good and matched to where they are at in their customer journey, they're on Facebook and they will watch it because it's targeted to them, right? It's a very specific ad that the machine has figured out to show to them at that time. They may not convert at that time, but it may move them down the journey to where they end up going to Google 3 weeks later and typing, Amplify advisors, sign up now.
Right. So the purpose of that ad isn't to convert them to a paying customer. It's just to usher them further along their customer journey.
That's right. And so you've got this blended customer acquisition cost across all your advertising spends. So you get to that point, which allows you to kind of breathe a little bit more as a business owner. You don't have to worry about every little piece of minutia because the machine is your media buyer now. You're just the creative director and providing that human touch, which is actually a lot more fun. If you get to be able to spend more time thinking about, what's the next video I'm going to make, what's the next image I'm going to have commissioned to put out there, what's the next piece of content I'm going to write. Hey, machine, figure out when to show it to these people. And then you just look at your dollars I'm spending and your score, your APS that comes out the other side. And if that's still in flux, it's still in the right place for you and it's not in flux, then you can keep increasing your budget until you hit the service level you're happy with.
Right. Kind of takes the subjectivity out of it. Like, I love that ad. Well, it's not making you any money, or it's not meant to be making you money, but nobody else loves it. Now, you've mentioned a number of your industry and ours is similar in one respect for sure, is that there's a lot of TLAs, 3-letter acronyms. And so you've been throwing around a few that I suspect that people are familiar with, return on investment, return on ad spend, cost per click, cost of acquisition. One acronym, of course, that nobody needs any introduction to at this point is AI. So how can, where my head goes is there's so much automation and there's so much process that if you've got it built, you can just kind of set it and forget it. Talk me either into that or out of that. How can AI be leveraged in this realm?
The biggest thing is utilizing the ad platform. So where the dollars are really being spent in AI right now is on these ad platforms. But you've got your large language models, so ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, like Grok, all the different AI models that can help speed things up for you, help you, write something, help you answer something, do some research for you, and that's all great and helpful in the day to day. In terms of marketing and growth engine, the two main things I would concentrate on with AI are where the dollars are being spent. And Meta has just completely rebuilt its hardware, never mind the AI that's running on that hardware, to change. They've just released their Andromeda update. The audience doesn't need to know about that, but it's a complete diametric shift in how they select an ad from their database to show to a customer when they're scrolling on Facebook or Instagram. They rolled out in totality in August, and it's completely changing ad accounts for those that have lots of ads in play. Because now, instead of being able to pick from, maybe 100 ads because the hardware wasn't strong enough and the AI wasn't strong enough to figure out which one had the highest probability of being successful, now it's thousands. And so it's going across in split second, making a decision and making a better decision than it used to make on which ad to show to which person. So while their CPMs are still going up, cost per mil, cost per thousand impressions, still going up, conversion costs are starting to go down now because customers are moving through the journey at a better rate. I'm seeing this with clients with really big ad budgets where I get to test a lot of this stuff out. The ability for the right creative to show at the right time to the right person is a game changer for advertisers, because we used to pick 5 or 6 pieces of creative and copy that covered the entire customer journey, and that's all the systems could manage, because you couldn't get any statistical relevance otherwise, because it didn't know what to show to whom when. Now you can put hundreds of these pieces of creative in there, and the AI system is learning every time it shows one to a specific person or a specific group of people what works and what doesn't work at each stage of the journey by itself without you telling it. So the creative now is the targeting. So you don't put any targeting out there now other than, maybe age and location. Beyond that, leave it alone, because they'll charge you a tax if you want to go a little bit further than that in terms of telling it what it should be targeting. It'll figure it out if you give it time. So that, and they're putting more and more money and more effort in that. And you remember, AI is basically, as we know it, at this point, until we get to super intelligence, AI is basically machine learning. And machine learning just means a machine that's figuring out how to get the right answer at a higher probability every time it tries. That's what it's trying to do. Get the right answer more often. So increasing the probability of it doing that. So the more data points you give it, the more creative you give it, the better it learns. And that goes for Meta and Google at the same time. That's one of the biggest things that you can implement
So
today with AI.
you want to fundamentally feed this machine so that it's got more tools to grab to deploy to the right person at the right part of their buying journey.
That's right. And then just let it figure it out, because everybody's different. I will have clients that say, like this ad, I don't really like it. It's got too much text on it, or I don't like the colors, or nobody's going to read that. And I might aesthetically agree. I might say, yeah, it's an ugly ad. I don't like it either. But guess what? It's got a 4.5% click-through rate in your system. It's not generating a large number of conversions. You see this one over here? It's generating a lot of conversions at a really low cost per acquisition. And if I take that one out, you watch next week, that one's going to be more expensive, because your system is broken, right? It's a team. Every one of those members of the team has to be on the field in order for the team to perform. So these individual points are super important, and being able to take the ego out of it, step back, and just keep having hypotheses of new ads that can do a different thing in your journey is where we all need to be focused, and let the AI do the rest of it, right? So we can just be creative humans now instead of having to get deep into the data.
So it's interesting you say that. So the creative element would remain kind of the human touch piece of that. And then there's an implementation element, of course, because we're following this process. And now we've got kind of this philosophical approach that we want to tackle. Practically speaking, how would, like, where does someone get started on this? What, like a small, medium business owner, forget professional services, think of, your standard retail or, business to business type of organization. How can they start to look to leverage this type of information?
Your first job is getting to know, or at least mapping, if you already know your ideal client profile really well, mapping out what that ideal client needs to see along their journey. So thinking about that loop, thinking about all the different touch points they need to have along that journey, from hearing about you or having the problem for the first time to getting to hiring you as a solution to the problem or buying your product. Doing your trigger mapping to think about what gets them into the market. What's the thing that gets them into the market first so you can be there? Because all your competitors are going to be thinking about the thing that converts them to a customer, right? And that's the most expensive thing to do. So you can go get this big bucket of audience by thinking about the 5 non-negotiable questions that we have in our trigger mapping checklist. What is the job that you need to do for one of these clients? What's the core thing that you need to solve for them? What's the first step that they need to take with you, or you need to take with them to solve that problem? What's the deciding factor in their head on who to go with? What's the biggest thing that they're thinking about that makes the decision for them? Like, I offer 24/7 support. My price is the lowest in the industry, or my price is the highest in the industry, because people sometimes will assign value to that. What's their biggest doubt? What's the biggest reason for not buying this service, buying this product? What's the thing that you need to overcome? And what's the gap in the market? What's the thing that others are not doing that you do, or that you could do? If you can answer those 5 questions for your ideal client profile, or each of your ideal client profiles, your creative juices are going to start flowing. And you're going to start thinking about the content that you could generate for your social channels, the things that could then turn into ads, the things that you could present on at the next mixer. All of that starts to flow from knowing your ideal client profile and mapping these triggers. And then if you needed to prioritize on what to do for your advertising, the 2 really core things are to get social proof, right? Like Spiegel did some research that said you can boost conversions by 270% by showing relevant customer reviews. So get that into your mix. If they're not on your website already, get them on your website. That costs you nothing, assuming you can update your own website. Get them on your social. That costs you nothing as well. If you've got advertising running, take some of those, like go to your Google reviews, grab some, make some Canva images, get them up into your ads. If you've got some ads running already and get those social proof in there too, you're going to get conversions pretty quickly. And then the second of the big 2 to focus on is your category heuristics. Like, what is the number 1 value prop that you bring to the table? What's the biggest problem you solve, and what's the best way that you solve it compared to everybody else in your category? And then make a lot of content or a big noise around that. Those are the core things that I would do in terms of the advertising side of things. And then when it comes to, you can use AI elsewhere in making sure you've got that post-click experience nailed. I would make sure that when people are getting in contact with you, whether it's by phone, through your chatbot on your website, filling out a form on the website, whatever it is, get your metrics on that up to as close to 100% as you can for answering the phone, getting back to people as soon as possible, automating those emails that come in, making sure there's somebody at the front desk. Like, if you can get that experience nailed and use AI to manage a lot of that for you, then every dollar you spend on advertising is going to be magnified, because you're more likely to convert those people, and they're more likely to stay because of the experience you offer them.
Right, you're a better custodian of them once they've kind of completed that customer journey, when in actuality, that's when the customer journey begins. What's
Exactly.
interesting is talking about that the trigger mapping is it's less of a digital trigger and more of their business hurdles that they are trying to overcome. Am I reading that correctly?
Absolutely. All of this is just we're humans selling to humans. That's what all of this is. The digital is just the platform and the ability for us to reach people with control. So we can't be everywhere all the time where our customers are. It's physically impossible for us to get our work done and be out there whenever a customer has a thought about us. So the digital is just the way to amplify what you're doing, right? Right? You're able to reach the customers at all hours of the day with the message, and the more personal you can make it, the better. But all of this comes down to, like, these are business truths that can be used in marketing and advertising.
Right. There's a big analog element of just fundamentally mapping, who your customers are and what pain points you're trying to solve.
That's right.
And then do you see, now talking through all of this, we've kind of gone through our own journey, through your customer journey, and the digital elements and that dynamic loop that you talked about, which I find is really resonates with me, is really compelling through the education buy cycle. I feel like that process and really elevating those numbers, is that a full-time, like that seems to me, the objective measures of that seems to be, with all the diverse platforms and the various elements, your 7-Eleven 4, is there dashboarding? Is there, is it external expertise? And this isn't necessarily a layup to you, but is it full-time in-house resources? What does that look like from a, call it, day-to-day management at the worker level, at, in our use case, a finance leader in a small medium business owner? What does that look like? What does good look like once you've started to get some of these wheels in motion?
Yeah, I think it depends on the business and what you've got in-house in your business. So it can be a bit of a hard lift to begin with, but every journey starts with that first step. And you can sort of work away at it, an hour in the evening here, like schedule it over, like there's learning that you can do over a lunch hour. Like there's a framework here, right? So it's every step you take, you're moving closer to it. And implementation, like just the hurdle of doing it, is the hardest part. And that's a psychological thing. If you can get over the psychological part and just go through the framework one step at a time, you will get there. You'll be starting to post better content. You'll be starting to have more conversations with your ideal client profile. You'll be starting to think a little bit more about their customer journey and what you need to be saying each stage of the customer journey. And the dashboarding, it's really not that complicated, because you bring it all back to how much time and money am I spending, and what am I getting out the other side, and is my APS score getting better?
Right.
Can I spend more money? Right. If you don't get bogged down in the smaller KPIs like ROAS and CPC, then you don't get so mentally mired in, well, that ad didn't convert people, but the next one might, and you've just built an audience for the second one. Right. So I think it's methodical. We call it a framework for a reason. It's methodical. You build it up over time. If you have an in-house person that is maybe doing organic social media or helping blog posts or LinkedIn management, that kind of stuff, this is something that person can learn and can work through with you as a business owner. It all depends on your personality too, if you want to be doing it yourself or having somebody else work with you on it.
Well, what's interesting is, advertising and marketing, I think people, it wouldn't be a leap to think that, the layperson thinks of advertising and marketing people as, the creative, subjective, blue sky, blue ocean type of people. But it sounds like you've really got a meticulous process, which, we've got a lot of process oriented people on our side of the equation as well. As I will take it now a little more self-serving, as finance leaders in our in our arena. Say we've got a CPA working as a fractional CFO in a growing organization. They've got their own, visions for growth, and our CFO is there to, support that. How can one of our CPA CFO types really drive that conversation with a business owner, business leader?
I think it all comes down to the in and out, right? If you come down to the statistical part of it, what are the business growth goals? Does the business want to grow from $1 million to $2 million this year? How are you going to do that? Where are you investing the dollars to get there? Right? And if you've got a budget to be able to go from A to B, and you can then predict what it looks like going from A to B, then you've got a good argument. You've got a good use case for how you go about it, right? So the case is, this is all driven by numbers and continuous improvement, just like any systems and processes you have in your business, right? It needs to be treated as such, right? It's a line item that allows you to invest in the future growth and profitability of the business in a predictable way. So it's follow the step-by-steps of what the framework looks like, and define your numbers. Define where you want to get to. What can I afford as a customer acquisition cost based on my lifetime customer value? What can I afford? And how many customers can I service if I were to be successful? And then work back from that. I need to acquire this many customers to hit my revenue goal. And I know that my revenue goal means that over the long term, my revenue outcomes are going to be Y. Therefore, I can spend a percentage of that to acquire these new customers, knowing that I am servicing year 2, 3, 4, 5 of the business. So it's a long-term horizon that I think the numbers make a lot of sense and are a lot more clarified if you strip it down to, like, how much does it cost me to acquire how much revenue over the long term of the business? That answer your question?
What are we measuring? How are we going to measure it, and how are we going to report back on it?
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's terrific. So we're just at the tail end of time here. So I just want to take the last couple of minutes here to really thank you for your insights here. I think we got from perhaps gray area to a few different shades of gray, perhaps, and a lot of clarity on the process side of things for sure. I know AI, of course, is a dominating point of the topic, but from what I understand out of this dialogue is that if you don't have that analog journey mapped out and the processes clear in your own organization, trying to go ahead and leverage AI isn't going to be necessarily all that fruitful. So everyone's got some takeaways to kind of map that journey, I would say, internally on what their ideal client looks like and what their pain points are. If you do have any follow-up here to our attendees, I want to thank you for spending the lunch hour with us. We'll follow up with your certificate for your CPD hours, and I'll send a link to Dave. You can follow him along on LinkedIn. He shares his insights quite frequently, and get in touch with any follow-on questions that you might have. But Dave, on behalf of myself and the rest of the amplifiers, thank you very much for sharing your insights with us. It was really great hearing your perspectives.
Thanks for having me, Dave. The hour has gone by so quickly. And yeah, please do follow me on LinkedIn. I will answer any questions anybody sends my way for sure. And if you do want to take a look at the framework yourself and go through the toolkit step by step and just get working on this stuff one day at a time, it's all available for free at dynamicinfluenceloop.com.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks so much, Dave. Really appreciate your time, and enjoy the rest of your day, everybody.
Thanks all.